Let's first begin with the objectives that we're going to cover during this video series. What we will be covering will be configuring a Cisco catalytic switch. During this video, we'll look at how to configure a host name. We'll go in and also look at password configurations for both the enabled and the secret password. Then we'll follow up by configuring our VTYs and line configurations, and then we'll enable port security. Alright, before we begin, let's go ahead and open up a hyperterminal session to our Cisco router. First, we'll begin by going to the Start menu, go to Programs, Accessories, Communications, and then I've already got its hyperterminal configuration figured here. So I'll just go ahead and click on that, and then I'll hit the Enter key. Now, as you can see, this router has came up, or this switch, has came up into the initial configuration. What we'll do is we'll just go ahead and select No here, and then we'll hit the Enter key. Now it'll take it a few seconds to go through, and then what it'll do is it'll come up and present us with a prompt to tell us to continue. Now sometimes I'll just sit here for a few minutes. All you have to do is just hit the Enter key a couple times, and it'll bring you up. Now, as you can see here, this switch is not has no host name or anything configured for it because it has default switch. Now, before we can even start configuring it, we must get in the right mode. Now, as we talked in other videos, we looked at how to navigate through. So I'll just go ahead and type enabled. Since I do not have an enabled password configured, it takes me straight into the privilege exact. Now, that's not very secure, is it? So one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to sit there and we'll give it a host name, then we'll secure that process. So now, in order to give it a host name, I'm going to have to be in global configuration mode. To do that, I got to navigate there, and I'll use the command config T. Now, this is short for configuration terminal. Now, as you can see, my prompt has changed from switch to switch configuration #. Now, let's go ahead and give this thing a name. So I'm just going to use the command, for that is host name. Yep. Got to spell it right first. Host name, and then we'll just call this 3CI training. Now, once you hit enter, you'll notice that the host name immediately changed to the name that I typed in. For example, here we typed 3CI training. Now, the next step would be to configure the enabled and the enabled secret password. Now, to do the enabled secret, we'll just go enable secret, and then our password. For this example, we'll just use Cisco in here. Now, when we're using passwords, if we're going to use both the enabled password and the enabled secret, there's one thing you need to remember. Once we enter these commands in, upon the enabled secret being in, it pretty much disables or nullifies the enabled password. So if you want, you can go ahead and we can type an enabled password, but just realize though the only password that will work at this point will be the enabled secret password. Now, let's go back to our slide here, and let's see. Now, we've got our host name and we configured our password. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to configure those VTYs and line console configuration. Now, Cisco devices are out of the box, have little or no security implied. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to secure my console access to prevent anybody from just coming into the wiring closet and plugging in. Now, to do that, we're going to type line con. As you can see, I just hit the tab key and it brought up the word con, and we're going to go con 0. Now notice your prompt. Now I've went from the config-line. Now the first thing I got to do is I got to assign a password. To do that, we're going to use the keyword or the key command password, and then our password. Alright, for here I'm just going to type remote. Hit enter. Now, by just typing the password, it does not do anything for it. In order to invoke the logon services, you'll have to type log in. Now, once we've done that, it has now, when we would log out and test it through a console, we'd be prompted for a password. Now, the next thing we're going to do, let's secure our VTY, or those telnet access. So what I do is I'll type exit, then I'll sit there and do VTY 0 space 4. Now what this is doing is going to take all five of my default VTY terminal access and configure them all with the same password. Notice what I did wrong there. I forgot to put the line in front of it, so we'll just go in there, put line in there. Now, let's go ahead and type again the password, and that defines the keyword, and then in here we'll just use Cisco. Like the console, you have to set there and enable login in order to invoke the logon services. Now, let's test it. Now, I'll just go ahead and hit a Control-Z, bring myself out, and then I'll exit. I'll hit the enter key once, and then see it. Now, as you can see, it prompts me for a password. Now, for this one I used, if you'll notice, you won't see any passwords being typed in. Now, it brings you immediately to my user exec mode. Now, to go to the privileged exec mode, again, we'll type enabled. And as you can see, it prompted me for a password. I'll put that password in, and now it brings me back to the privileged exec. At this point now, I've verified both my enabled secret and my LionCon0 password. So I'll just go ahead and save these configurations. The command we do that is copy, run, start. And what we're doing is we're copying running configuration to startup configuration. As you can see, we accept the default name, startup configuration. Next, now let's talk about port security. In here, when we're going to do port security, we're going to have to go to a particular interface. Now on a switch, again, I'll have to be in global configuration mode, so I'll do config T, and then I'm going to have to get into my specific port. So I'm going to use the keyword interface. Then I'm going to do, since these are fast Ethernet, FA 0/1. Now, this is going to bring me to the first port on the switch. Now, to enable port security, by default, this thing is set up to dynamically determine whether if this is an access port or a trunk. Well, in order to enable port security, we have to specifically assign this port a mode, and we have to say this mode is the access mode. So, to do that, we use the word switch port, and then we'll say mode access. Now what this does is makes this port an access port, and if somebody tried to trunk this or put a connection from this switch to another switch, it would not form a trunk. Now the next part of this is I'm going to have to do, I'm going to enable the switch port security. Now that command is going to be switch port, and if we do a question mark, as you can see, port security. And now we've got some additional commands that we can use on this. So I'll just hit the question mark. As you can see, I've got aging, how long it'll hold the MAC addresses. I can tell it to specify a specific MAC address. I can also define how many MAC addresses that will learn on this port using the MACs. By default, it's 1. And of course, the violation. And what happens when we do have someone with the incorrect MAC address, or somebody takes a hub and plugs in and has a whole bunch of devices in there. I can either tell it to shut it down, get a report, or error. So we'll have 3 options that we'll be able to use here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit here and say max, and I'm going to say max of 2 MAC addresses. Now, also I'm going to set there instead of violation, so I'll just hit an up arrow and do violation, and in here you can see I can protect, restrict, or shut down. Well, I want to be very specific. If somebody does violate my security policy, I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. So we'll just do shut down. Now, the next thing I want to do, I may want to map a specific MAC address to this port. Now, the command to do that is going to be switch port, MAC address, port security. Got to spell it right first. MAC. Now, we've got a couple options here. I can put in the specific MAC address if you know it, and we can find that out by going to our computer and doing the, if it's a Windows computer, go ipconfig /all, and we can get the MAC address there. Or I can let it dynamically learn it by using the keyword sticky. Now what this means is, as soon as I plug a device into that port, it's going to automatically learn the MAC address of that device, and then it's going to input that into the configuration file. So I'm going to use this option here. So we'll just use the keyword sticky. So now, as you can see, I've enabled port security. I've put on here a max of a violation, a violation of shutdown. I've allowed it to learn 2 MAC addresses, and it's going to learn the first MAC address dynamically. And then the second one, if somebody was to plug in another one, it would learn it. Alright, now, what I'll do is, to verify that these configurations went in there, I'll do the Control-Z, bring myself back to the privileged exec mode, issue show run. Now, as you can see on the first port, we've got switch port mode access, switch port security, switch port, sorry about that, and the switch port in there. Now we just go on down through. We can also see that our line comms passwords are put in there. And from here, I will just go ahead and do a copy, run, start to save my configurations. Alright. Let's go back and review what we've just went over. We went over there how to configure a host name by using the keyword host word name. We also went through password configuration. I showed you how to do the enabled secret. We also went through and did the VTY and line configuration where we did con 0, and we enabled port security. I'd like to thank you for viewing this video, and hope to see you again in the future.